Good afternoon all. Welcome back to my son's channel, Nitro John 1. We're in the process of going through the transmission swap. Currently the car has a V8 T5 in it, and I'm swapping it out for a Hanlon Motorsports TR3650. Reasons I'm going to do the transmission swap is I need a little bit more favorable first gear. The gear ratio on between the T5 V8 and the TR3650 get a little bit more, I guess, torque manipulation with the first gear on the TR3650. Also, with this setup, I went with their road racing fifth gear, which I think is a 0.8 overdrive, as opposed to, I think it might be a 0.68 overdrive in the T5. That'll help the car go down the straightaways at the tracks I run. I basically track the car like Lime Rock. I've been to Palmer Motorsport Park. I've also been to Poconos, participate with the folks over at EMRA. So I enjoy bringing the car to the track. I like to get a little bit more favorable RPM range. So those are really the reasons I'm looking to make the swap. And also the TR3650 has a higher torque rating, which, you know, the T5 might be limited based on the power that the car is currently making. So we're going to go through kind of the steps on how I'm going through the process and the parts and pieces that are needed to go through it, and I guess, if you will, all of the nuances of things that need to be modified to actually make this happen. A couple of key components that you're going to need to make this swap happen is you need a way to adapt the TR3650 to the stock block, and in order to do that, you need to pick up one of these Canfield Industries adapter plates. That's the aluminum plate there. Basically, the smaller bolt pattern that you see on it, that lines up with the bolt pattern on the back of the 2.3 liter block. You need to change out the dowel pins to make that align, but for the most part, that's kind of like step one, if you will. And then to mate the TR3650 to that plate, I went with one of these QuickTime, I guess it's a scatter shield, if you will. So that has the proper bolt pattern that'll match up to the modified TR3650 from Hanlon Motorsports. I do have several other things that need to actually happen to try and make this fit. One of the problems that I have is the actual downpipe. The blower, or the housing, is significantly wider than the stock T5 housing, so it leaves less room between the frame rails. Do a quick comparison between the two side by side. Here you can see the difference between the stock 2.3 liter bell housing, which is on the left, and the QuickTime bell housing on the right. I basically overlaid the backing plate that goes up against the block, and you can see sizable difference between the two. This is what's causing my interference issue with the downpipe. The starter, which is on the left, projects much more closely to the frame rail than the stock unit, so that's what's going to be requiring modification. The Canfield Industries backer plate, or adapter plate, comes with all the required hardware to mount it with. The only thing it doesn't come with is the hardware to mount the starter. But I guess one of the key components that in review the instructions is you have to install shorter dowel pins. These are the comparison between the dowel pin on the right, which is the stock dowel pin, and the dowel pin on the left is the one with the Canfield Industries adapter. And the reason for that is, if you could see in the actual plate itself, you see the countersink holes. Those are so that the supplied hardware sit flush with the back of the aluminum plate and don't interfere with the new bell housing. And this hole in particular is where the dowel pin basically aligns the plate to the block, and the pin has to be short enough so that that recessed head sits in the countersink. So that's why they supply the hardware. It makes sense. See how hard this is to get him into the block. Shouldn't be too bad. So in this picture, you can see the back of the block. I basically degreased it. I used some brake clean, sprayed everything down. Looks like the remnant seal isn't leaking. It's relatively new. I don't think the motor has maybe 3,000 miles on it, so for the most part, I'm not going to change out the rear main seal. Normally, I'd probably say go ahead and do it while you're in there, but the rear main seal, like I said, maybe it's got 3,000 miles out since the rebuild. The only thing you might be somewhat of a concern is when I picked up this block, one of the guys on Turbo Ford actually helped me out, a guy out in Pennsylvania. It's been a little while since I picked up the block. So the block was previously damaged, and it was welded up, it looks like somewhat professionally. The hopes are, though, that there's no real alignment issues. I didn't have any with the T5 bell housing, but I guess we'll see when we go ahead and measure for the adapter. You can kind of see where the ear on the block was re-welded. And I say normally you probably would just get another block that's cheap enough, but this block was already machined and everything else, so it's kind of, unfortunately, it is what it is. And it served me well, I'm making good power, but I guess we'll see ultimately in the end if it winds up causing a major issue with the alignment. So let's see what happens. So the new dowel pins went in pretty straightforward. Basically just used the back of the hammer and actually just tapped them in. A lot easier than I thought they'd go in. They were certainly a lot harder to get out than go back in. So that went well. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the plate and try and fit it on just temporarily so I can see how it aligns up. So now what I've been able to do is get the adapter plate mocked up at the end of the block. Basically slid over the shortened dowel pins nicely. There's no gaps. It's sitting flush with the block. All I'm trying to do is right now just check basic fitment. So I haven't torqued anything down, nor have I actually installed all of the fasteners. Like I said, all I'm trying to do is get it mocked up to see if everything basically fits. Then we'll kind of take everything apart and put it in for a final assembly. So right now everything is looking good. Like I said, the plate fits over the dowel pins nicely and sits flush with the block. So looks like the whoever did that repair to the block did a pretty decent job. So I was able to get the block plate mounted. The block plate mounts over the new dowels that are in the adapter plate, which is adapted to the block. So everything seems to, again, line up, which is a good sign. The only problem, as I expected, is that the downpipe from the turbo needs to be reworked. One of the simple solutions is it looks like to add a spacer, maybe a 1/2-inch spacer between the turbo manifold and the actual turbocharger. That'll push the downpipe further away from this block plate and tighter to the frame rail or the firewall. It looks like it's doable. The only problem I have now is that getting the bolts off of the turbo header to turbocharger is going to be a real challenge, as they're completely seized up on the threads. So I might wind up having to take the actual manifold out so that I can go ahead and either split the nuts or cut the nuts or do something along that line. You can kind of see, I don't know if you can see in this photo or the video, the mounting location between the header and the turbo. You can see those bolts there. They're completely seized. I tried to get a wrench on them. I put some spray, put some heat to it. They got nothing. You try and actually turn them, and they're actually, I guess if you will, stripping the corners on the actual nuts themselves. So even with heat and penetrating oil, no luck. So unfortunately, I think the manifold's going to want to have them to come out. I'm going to have to get those 4 bolts off and then add that spacer plate, and that should kind of provide enough clearance to move the header off the actual downpipe. Right now I have it disconnected, move that away to try and trial fit the actual motor plate, if you will. So that's another challenge we're going to have to overcome. So the last thing I'm going to do today is basically temporarily mock up the bell housing itself. So bell housing went on fairly straightforward. Nothing's bolted in. All I did was rest it on the dowel pins of the adapter plate, but everything seems to mount up. It does seem fairly massive in size compared to the stock unit. It's bigger, obviously, to pick up the V8 clutch pack, so it's a bigger flywheel, bigger clutch assembly, which will help in transmission of power and ease of clutch operation. Won't have to go to as aggressive a clutch with the bigger clutch. So I don't have to. Right now I'm currently using a spec stage 3 plus to handle the power in the car, and quite frankly it's a little terrible driving this car to the track with that clutch system. It's kind of like a light switch. So hopefully this arrangement will give me a little bit better clutch feel. It'll handle more power, and the gear ratio should be a little bit more favorable for the 4-cylinder. So let's see how this goes. I appreciate you guys tuning in today. Stay tuned for some more updates. Obviously I need to figure out how I'm going to make this downpipe work. We'll get to there when we get to there. But in the meantime, let's enjoy your day, and thanks for watching again. Have a great day. Bye.